11:54 p.m. Over the Belgorod sky, the scream of a HIMARS rocket tears through the winter night. Cold, sharp, and surgical, like a blade. Inside Russia's operations post, the radar display erupts in light. More than 50 tracks are charging in. 18 seconds from now, Putin's strategy of weaponizing the cold begins to pivot. The winter he used as a weapon is about to fight back against Russia itself. On the other side of the border, inside Ukraine's control room, the coordinates of the Belgorod Thermal Power Plant lock onto the screen. The numbers do not tremble. They do not blink. They leave no space for hesitation. Belgorod TPP is no longer simply a $120 million power facility. It is the city's thermal heart, supplying more than a third of its heating. And it is the queerest, most naked symbol of the energy war the Kremlin chose to start. 31 HIMARS M31A1 GMLRS rockets and 68 suicide drones are ready to fire. The total cost is roughly $50 million. This is a cold answer to Russia's $131 million strike on the night of January 20th. One side spent money to shut off the lights for 800,000 people in Kyiv. The other side spends less to steal the warmth from 115,000 people in Belgorod. That brutal symmetry is the message Ukraine intends to send. 11:49 p.m. The launch order is issued in absolute silence. The Ukrainian lieutenant does not say a word. He simply sets his finger on the green button and presses down. The first sound is not an explosion, but a spine-chilling hiss, as 6 solid-fuel motors on the GMLRS salvo ignite at once. In under 0.4 of a second, pressure inside the launch tube spikes from atmospheric to nearly 3,000 pounds per square inch. The first rocket tears off the rails at roughly 20 Gs. That is force enough to crush a human body. It rips into the night, dragging a flame trail more than 130 feet long behind it. The next rockets follow with the steady rhythm of a mechanical heartbeat, one every 2 seconds. 6 HIMARS launchers fire in unison, turning that moment into a murderous harmony of steel and flame. 62 seconds later, the 31st and final rocket disappears into the dark. Immediately, all 6 HIMARS vehicles kill their navigation systems. They punch the throttles on their Caterpillar C7 diesel engines and vanish into the pine forest at more than 50 miles per hour. They have less than 4 minutes before Russian counter-battery sensors compute the launch point and call in an Iskander retaliation strike. Above them, 31 GMLRS rockets are rewriting the idea of a firestorm. They knife forward at roughly Mach 2.5, nearly 2,800 feet per second. They cruise at 49,000 feet near the edge of the stratosphere. A blended GPS and inertial guidance package holds accuracy to under 16 feet. But what makes them truly dangerous isn't speed or precision. It is how they are being played. Ukraine is not firing separate bodies. All 31 rockets leave the rails in just over a minute. From the instant they clear the tubes, each one has been pre-programmed with a different altitude profile and time on target. They automatically sort themselves into 3 attack waves in mid-air. The first wave of 8 rockets climbs the highest, pushing toward nearly 59,000 feet. They reach the engagement zone first. Their mission is not to hit. Their mission is to be seen, to light up Russian screens and force air defense radars to trigger early intercepts. Their paths and speed profiles shift repeatedly, forcing Russian systems to process too many targets at once. Too fast in too little time. The final wave of the remaining 8 flies lower still, around 26,000 feet. They follow asymmetric arcs calculated in advance. They reveal themselves only after the defenders have burned through reaction time, ammunition, and focus. This is no longer a normal strike. It is a remotely conducted symphony, with every note timed to the moment the defense begins to fatigue. 11:52 p.m. Belgorod's Air Defense Command Center. Captain Sergei Volkov sits in front of the Pantsir S-1's 96 L6E radar display. 9 consecutive night shifts have left him exhausted and unfocused. To Volkov, this is paperwork in uniform. Belgorod is deep rear. Ukraine cannot touch this place. At least, that is what he has been trained to believe. Seconds later, the screen flickers. 8 red points appear at roughly 24 miles out, near 59,000 feet. They are moving at about Mach 2.5. Volkov's heart kicks hard. He confirms the return a second time. It is not a glitch nor interference. 8 targets inbound. His voice carries over the radio, unable to hide the tension. In under 3 seconds, the sky over Belgorod changes state. What was a sleepy graveyard shift becomes full combat. Pantsir S1 batteries snap awake. The 1RL-144M radar switches to continuous
Cut the line
wave
here
mode.
at 0400.
Power is pushed to maximum,
Understood.
carving the air ahead
Executing
like
the
an
sequence.
invisible blade. 48N6E6 missiles sit loaded in their tubes, each with a 20-kilogram warhead. That is enough to shred targets out to 20 kilometers. 4 2A38 M30mm autocannons whip 180 degrees toward the threat. They are ready to spit thousands of rounds per minute. Farther out at Stary Oskol, 80 kilometers from Belgorod, the S-400 Triumph enters the fight. The 92N6E Gravestone radar locks the first 8 tracks, classifying them as high-speed cruise missiles. 48N6E3 launchers come hot. These are Mach 14 interceptors with a 250-kilometer reach, waiting for the command to fire. The 55K6E battle management computer runs at full tilt, drawing intercept solutions in an instant. It displays a number meant to calm everyone down. 96% probability of kill. Deeper still, in the invisible layer of the war, the Krasuka 4 starts speaking. Its active phased array antenna pumps heavy jamming into the L-band, the same band's GPS relies on. 20 kilowatts of electronic power surge into the air. It is enough to distort satellite navigation within a 150-kilometer radius. On paper, it is perfect. The missiles are detected, blocked, blinded, and dropped out of the sky before they can touch anything that matters. But in that moment, Volkov has no idea that what he is seeing is only the surface of a trap. 11:53 p.m. Over Belgorod, the first wave flies dead straight at nearly 59,000 feet. They broadcast GPS signals non-stop, like an open dare. They do not attempt to evade, because, from the start, these are the missiles chosen to die. The S-400 reacts almost instantly. 48N6E3 interceptors rip off the rails with a tearing roar, dragging white contrails for miles into the night. Less than 15 seconds later, the first Ukrainian GMLRS rockets are hit. They ignite and disintegrate in midair. Inside the command room, "Target destroyed" flashes on the screen. A few relieved cheers break out. No one notices that the very act of firing has created a radar blind cone. It is a conical dead zone lasting less than 20 seconds. But that is enough. That is the gap Ukraine has been waiting for. In that exact window, the second wave slips through. The newly formed blind cone drops to around 39,000 feet and begins violent maneuvering. The flight paths turn chaotic. Speeds shift and trajectories bend like thrown knives. On Volkov's screen, target returns multiply, overlap, and dance. Pantsir can see many tracks, but it can only lock a few at any one moment. 15 inbound targets force the radar to split its scan time into thinner and thinner slices. Each target gets less look time, and accuracy collapses. The battle computer flashes warnings to prioritize engagements. But which one is the priority when all of them are closing at Mach 2.5? Volkov has 4 seconds to decide. He chooses the nearest tracks. 848 N6E6 missiles launch. 3 hit, 5 miss. As the targets jerk through sharp course changes, 12 GMLRS rockets keep coming. And that is enough. They do not need to destroy everything. They only need to drain the defense, expose radar behavior, and force the defender to swing open its own door. Right after that, Krasuka 4 surges to maximum output. GPS jamming floods the airspace. In theory, the remaining missiles should go blind and fall into empty fields. But Ukraine has been waiting for this moment. Seconds later, all 12 surviving GMLRS rockets switch to pure inertial navigation. No GPS, no satellite fix. Only gyros, accelerometers, and preloaded terrain data. They fly on mechanical memory. Volkov watches in disbelief as the tracks do not drift. 11:54 p.m. The third wave appears. The final 8 rockets fly lower, hugging a virtual terrain profile. They slip through the cluttered, disrupted radar picture. Pantsir catches weak, intermittent returns. 16 air defense missiles remain, but the firing solution is unstable. Volkov faces the last choice. Shoot now with a high probability of miss, or wait and let the targets close further. He fires. 8 interceptors launched. 2 hits, 6 miss. 6 GMLRS rockets are still inbound. Pantsir is running out of options. The 30mm guns roar, throwing lethal clouds of metal into the sky. 2 GMLRS rockets are shredded mid-air, but the last 4 are already too close. Just over a mile out, less than 3 seconds of flight time. The guns cannot swing fast enough. Volkov watches 4 red points drive straight into Belgorod TPP and spits out a desperate curse. 11:55 p.m. At roughly 10,500 feet, 4 GMLRS rockets tip into near vertical dives. They are moving at more than 2,600 feet per second. Inside the plant control room, Chief Engineer Viktor Sokolov is still bent over the boiler pressure gauges. Everything reads normal. No sirens, no evacuation order. On the security cameras, night shift workers stand outside smoking and laughing. Their breath turns to white vapor in the biting cold. Less than a tenth of a second later, the rockets punch through the last layer of cloud.
Understood.
The inertial guidance enters its terminal phase. No new signal is needed. No new image is required. Each rocket has known exactly where it must land since the instant it left the launcher. 4 targets, 4 trajectories. No room for error. No waste. When the altitude collapses to roughly 650 feet, the countdown compresses into less than a quarter of a second. Viktor Sokolov instinctively looks up. He sees 4 white-blue streaks cutting straight down like falling stars. In that microscopic moment, his brain manages only one thought. Those are not shooting stars. 11:55:08 p.m. Impact. GMLRS rocket number 28 drives into the main boiler at roughly 2,790 feet per second. The protective steel cannot respond in time. The metal body punches through like a knife through butter, burying itself 14 feet deep into the boiler core. Inside, superheated water is trapped at roughly 58 pounds per square inch. The M235 delay fuse triggers 0.08 seconds later, just long enough for the warhead to seat itself inside the plant's heart before detonating. Immediately, the first explosion tears open the confined space. Roughly 198 pounds of PBX-9 detonates. The detonation wave races at nearly 28,900 feet per second. It releases about 279 million foot-pounds of energy. This is equivalent to 200 pounds of TNT detonating inside a sealed steel chamber. Within a 12-foot radius, pressure spikes above 680,000 pounds per square inch. That is hundreds of times greater than the pressure at the deepest ocean trench. Temperature surges toward 5,800 degrees Fahrenheit in 0.02 of a second. The boiler shell, 1.6 inches of steel, cannot survive such an internal detonation. It ruptures like a balloon punctured by a needle. The shockwave propagates outward at over 14,700 feet per second. This is not wind. It is a moving wall of energy that crushes anything in its path. Roughly 3,500 tons of water at 430 degrees Fahrenheit suddenly loses containment. The water does not have time to boil gradually. It flash vaporizes explosively in about 0.04 seconds, expanding 1,700 times in volume. Secondary pressure adds more than 12,000 pounds per square inch. The result is a steam bomb effect that rips the boiler building from the inside out. Steel plates weighing nearly 18,000 pounds are thrown like cardboard. Steam lines more than 31 inches in diameter snap like plastic straws. A column of scalding steam punches upward more than 260 feet. It carries metal, concrete, and the bodies of 3 workers standing 130 feet away. But the first blast is only the overture. Less than a second later, GM-LRS rocket number 29 strikes the heavy fuel tank. Inside the 528,000-gallon tank sits nearly 4 million pounds of mazout fuel. When the 198-pound warhead detonates, it forms a plasmasphere nearly 20 feet wide. In just a tenth of a second, more than 260,000 pounds of fuel flash into vapor. It mixes with oxygen into an ignition-perfect cloud. Then, the fuel-air detonation happens. This is a volumetric explosion, energy released by ultra-fast combustion through open space. Total energy climbs to roughly 34 trillion foot-pounds. That is equivalent to more than 19,000 pounds of TNT. A fireball nearly 600 feet across lights the night so violently that security cameras white out. Temperatures inside the fireball rise toward 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It is hot enough to melt aluminium, copper, and cast iron. The third shockwave expands with more than 18 pounds per square inch of overpressure. It is enough to collapse brick walls, deform steel frames, and fling human bodies like straw. 3 workers about 460 feet away die instantly from the blast overpressure. Almost simultaneously, the final rockets hit the 220 kilovolt substation and smokestack 1. The transformer station detonates in a blue flash. More than 10,500 gallons of insulating oil ignites, throwing a black smoke column 400 feet high. Belgorod's grid loses roughly 30% of its capacity in an instant. Streetlights across 4 districts die at once. The smokestack, more than 260 feet tall, snaps at the base. Nearly 1,760 tons of steel and concrete crashes down like a toppled tower. The impact boom is heard almost 4 miles away. 11:56 p.m. It is over. The Belgorod Thermal Power Plant no longer exists. In its place is a crater roughly 200 feet by 130 feet and about 26 feet deep. It burns with flames more than 130 feet high. From 13,000 feet up, Ukrainian truncheons record a thermal signature brighter than sunset. Infrared sensors show the boiler blast center still above 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. On the ground, a civilian films with trembling hands and whispers that this is the end of the world. A black smoke pillar nearly 2,000 feet tall swallows the sky. The firelight turns the snow a sick, unnatural pink. On the night of January 25th, 2025, Ukraine did not simply destroy a power plant. It engraved a new truth of 21st century war. If you turn winter into a weapon, be careful, because the cold can pivot and bury you. This winter, Moscow is trembling. Not because of snow, but because it knows the next winter will be colder still. The invader has learned its lesson. Now here is the last question for you. If you were sitting in Ukraine's command chair after Belgorod, where would you strike next? A second power plant? A rail junction? Or a deep logistics hub? And more importantly, why that target? Leave your answer in the comments below. If this kind of analysis helps you see the war more clearly, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video. Because winter is not over, and the next moves will be even colder.